Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called Creative Digital Agency. I work for a prominent marketing agency, creative digital agency, whatever you want to call it. We're in one of the big holding groups. We win a lot of awards, and truth be told, most of what we do is pretty much all crap we overcharge our clients for. All agencies are just in the business of selling hours for more than they paid for them. If quality or job satisfaction slips in, it's good, as long as it doesn't get in the way of profit. Anyway, I just had a hilarious situation play out and needed to share it with someone. Like most agencies, we'll promise clients during the sales pitch that we have the best staff, and then once the deal is sealed, we scramble to find contractors who can do the work for a rate low enough for us to maintain margins. Contractors are never well treated but often are well enough paid to make up for it. We've been doing a project for about 3 years with one client. And so our contractors on it are in a bit of a special situation, where they've been with the company longer than many of our full-time folks. 11 months is what we're averaging for career longevity. So, this one traffic manager lady is especially bad to contractors. It's her job to find them, but she does not like them. She treats them all like they're beneath her, as contractors risk a lot to complain. So mostly they just cash their checks and put up with her. Someone on the team is a contractor, and honestly, he's been there for over 2 years and he's amazing at his job. The client loves him, he's a cornerstone on the project. But the general manager of my agency hates this contractor. It's all about money and power, the only things the general manager carest about. And he hates that this contractor had any power. Once the contractor established himself as invaluable to the client, my agency offered the contractor a full-time position, but it would have meant less pay. So the contractor, who had originally asked for a full-time position since he has a family, turned it down, saying he would take a longer-term contract at his original rate. This cut into the manager's margins, so he was mad. But he had no choice but to sign the deal. The agency was still making a great margin as we billed the contractor out for $1,600 per day and he charged us $1,300. On any given day, we had around 50 people working on projects for this client with an overall margin of about 45%. So we're completing a major milestone and wanted to set up a little celebratory dinner. But more to the point, our contract with the client is up and the general manager wants to renew it. The client was stalling and going through rate negotiation, and despite the fact that none of the contractors were getting raises, the manager's line is, "We have to increase costs to cover increased salaries every year." This is true, but he's just doing it because he wants more money as he doesn't care about the staff. So a dinner for about 100 people is where he gets to feign interest until the next contract is signed and he can go back to not caring about any of the details except if checks clear. Agencies today are never keen on paying for things they don't have to, so it's rare that they would pay the bill for a big event. Anyway, we set up a launch celebration dinner that probably costs around $15,000 in food and drinks. I sent out an invite, and instantly got an email from the traffic manager, who monitors all after-hours invites to contractors and all of their emails at all times, and she scolds me for inviting a contractor to a dinner party. She has a long list of reasons, but the biggest was that we don't want to pay overtime and that we don't want to pay for dinner for a contractor. I talk with the contractor about it, and he tells me that they've told him his contract won't be extended past the launch. He's a little down about it. So I remind him that we baked in a 3-month-out clause into his contract back when they were worried about him leaving. And I ask if they've given him 3 months' notice. He said he forgot about the 3-month-out, says he'll follow up with the traffic manager and see what she says. A few days later he asks me to read an email. He's got a bit of a dirty look. He had emailed the traffic manager and the general manager about the 3-month-out, and they told him essentially to screw off, and that they weren't paying him past the end of the month. He had kindly responded, "Does that mean my contract is void?" The manager had said very clearly, "Yes, I don't care what the contract says. You're done at the end of the month." So he's out of his contract, and his non-compete clause. The night of the dinner comes and it's a ghost town. Only our full-time staff members are there, none of the client's staff or our contractors. They weren't invited. In order to get a prepaid discount, the agency spent money in advance on a buffet. Food for 100 people, but there's only like 15 of us there, the general manager, and some sales guy account managers. Very few people who did any actual work showed up because they don't want to be used for sales to the client. And nobody from the client's team is there. The general manager is frantically trying to get in touch with someone to figure out what's going on. Nobody is answering his calls. Finally, he gets through to the vice president from the client's team, who responds, "Hey, sorry I can't chat now, I'm out to dinner with the contractor and my staff. You know, the people who made this launch possible? We're having a great time. Also, I just wanted to let you know that we love the contractor and we've decided to extend him on the project." and his team of developers and designers will be taking over the support contract. The manager literally threw a plate across the room. There went a few million in billable hours over the next years. The contractor, realizing his contract wasn't valid anymore, went and hired up all the other contractors we had with experience working on the client's project. They even gave the client a cut rate, $1,500 a day instead of $1,600, and he's able to pay the folks he hired a better rate too, since he doesn't care about having such ridiculous margins that only really serve to support salespeople. I heard through the rumor mill he locked in a 2-year support contract, with some ongoing new development work as well. The next story is called, Refuse to Give Me My Money? I own a sign company. I received a phone call from someone at a local mall. He was opening a restaurant in the food court. The catch was that he wanted to be open in 2 weeks for Black Friday, the busiest shopping day of the year. I met with him and the mall management at the same time, so that we could discuss ideas and get approval at the same time to speed up production. He got everything agreed upon: his big, overhead backlit menu sign, smaller signs on both walls, and signs for both registers. All in all, it was going to be a pretty large order. I typically get a 50% deposit, but the customer said something about international money transfers, and the mall management jumped right in to explain that payments were taking a couple of weeks to process, but everything they'd charged him had been paid. Because I had been doing a lot of work in the mall and I was trying to help them get this guy open, I agreed to do it without the deposit. I did layouts, he approved them. I showed him samples, he approved them. I got everything finished and installed the Tuesday before he needed them. And that's when things went downhill fast. He immediately started complaining that the material was wrong, even though he'd seen samples and it wasn't what he wanted. Then he complained that the graphics were wrong, even though he'd approved them. He complained that the prices were wrong, even though they all matched the menu he provided. Wednesday afternoon I called him again and his wife answered. She cheerfully told me that I could take down my signs as they weren't paying for them. They had ordered signs cheaper from someone else, but they couldn't get them ready in time, and as soon as the other signs were ready, mine were going in the trash. So, realizing that I'd screwed myself by doing the job without a deposit, I hung everything on her little side comment that I could take down my signs. Thursday I had a delightful Thanksgiving lunch with my family. We watched football, we laughed, we enjoyed the day. I took my wife and kids home, loaded up a ladder, and joyfully went to the mall. I'd done enough after hours work at the mall that I knew there would be a door open somewhere and people in the large stores getting ready for the Black Friday crowds. I went in, tossed my ladder over the restaurant counter, and started taking down the signs. A couple of merchants in the mall asked me if the place was already closing, and I told them the story. And the next thing I know, they are helping me take down the signs. In 30 minutes the place went from looking like a fully open, ready to rock restaurant to looking closed. I went home and slept like a baby. When I turned on my phone at 7:30 on that Friday, I'd already had 15 missed phone calls from the restaurant owner, his wife and the mall management. I called the mall management and they weren't happy. I told them the whole story, they still weren't happy with me, but they understood. I waited 15 minutes before the restaurant owner called screaming in the phone demanding that I return with the signs. I politely told him that I needed the full amount, plus the cost of reinstallation, plus an extra $50 for working on an off day. He screamed at me and I hung up. He called back once more and demanded that I bring them back and he would pay me the next week. I said no, I needed cash. He screamed at me again and I hung up. I avoided the mall because of Black Friday, but from what I heard, it was comical. His entire backlit sign was nothing but lit up bulbs. He'd handwritten a menu on an old box and taped it to the front of the counter. Every restaurant in the food court was slammed all day and nobody would even take his free samples. He closed mid-afternoon after realizing nobody was going to buy. He went through the entire shopping weekend with no signs and no business. The best part was that 2 weeks later, when his new signs from India finally arrived, they were the wrong size. The last story is called, He Demands I Call Him Uncle. My mother's youngest brother was born 15 years before me, and as such, always had this weird thing that I show almost reverence to the fact he is my elder. He doesn't do this to my brother or my cousins, just me. When I hit 16, I went to a technical college in the United Kingdom to do my A-levels, and my uncle went back to learn to be an electrician. We would pass now and then when our classes had breaks and normally just nod in acknowledgement. One day after class one went into the town centre about 200 meters down the road and ran into my Uncle William shopping. I said hi to him to get his attention and we had our usual chat, then said our goodbyes and left. In the 20 minutes it took to get home, my dear Uncle William had called my mother and ranted about how I called him Will over and over and how I should call him Uncle William. I will point out neither my brother or I have called any of my aunts or uncles Aunt X or Uncle Y since we were about 8 or 9 years old, and none of them complained. My mother told him to not make a big deal out of it but would speak to me about it. Later we had a laugh, but for the sake of keeping the peace, she told me to just say it to shut him down. Shame my dear uncle didn't think this one through. He didn't like his classmates to know how old he was, and the fact I teased him that he was in a class of people I went to school with drove him mad, and to complain to my mother that I should never mention his age. Being the caring and loving nephew I did, of course, shout hey Uncle William any and every chance first got when first saw him at college. After the third time, he called my mother, who just repeated what he demanded. I admit, I probably went out the way to ensure that on breaks from class we would go to where his class was having a coffee to go chat and say hello to my Uncle William, and if he could give grandmother a message when he got home, etc. I think it lasted no more than 3 weeks before my uncle had gone from calling my mother to demand I always call him Uncle William, to only when we are away from classmates. Then not at college, swiftly adding not in town either. Each demand met with my mother replying it's either all the time or none of the time, you can't pick and choose. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.